Good afternoon. My name is Timothy Lee, and I'm a mining analyst here at Red Cloud Securities. Our next company today is UEX Corporation. We welcome Roger Lemaitre, CEO, and Evelyn Abbott, the CFO, to speak to us today. UEX is one of the larger explorers and developers in the Athabasca Basin, with almost 100 million pounds of uranium. It hopes to double that through the acquisition of JCU Canada. Roger, you have 15 minutes, and then we'll have a 5-minute Q&A at the end of the session. Attendees, please feel free to ask questions using the Q&A link below. Take it away.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for your interest in UEX. And thank you to Red Cloud for hosting this conference. It's been very, very well attended. And I'd like to introduce you to our CFO, Evelyn Abbott, who will answer some of the questions potentially as we move along. We're really excited to talk to you today about this transformation that we're going through here with the announcement a couple weeks ago of our acquisition of JCU. JCU is not well known in uranium circles in the investment community, but certainly well known amongst the Athabasca players, having been involved in very successful exploration and development over the last 20 years. The combination of these two words, hate to use that word transforming, but it certainly is a transformational, unique company that will result from this acquisition. And we'll talk to you about it as we move forward. We are, of course, going to be looking forward-looking statements. So for those of you in Canada or the United States, please read the appropriate disclaimer there as we move forward. A little bit about UEX. As of the opening of yesterday, we were trading at about 39.5 cents with a market cap of just under $180 million. Cameco, one of our founders, is still our largest shareholder. Seger Capital and is probably number 2, debating where the funds sit on any given day, the ETF funds, and a whole bunch of uranium investment vehicles are in that 1% to 2% range. So while, what does the acquisition mean? I think we'll go backwards a little bit first and talk about who the heck is JCU. For those of us who've been in the space, as I've been since the year 2000, JCU was born in the year 2000, picked up a bunch of assets from what's now part of the government, Japan Atomic Energy Agency. And they've been very successful and quiet with some of the larger players developing and exploring and developing things like Kikivik, Wheeler River, and Millennium. And they bring those projects as part of the package that we would be obtaining if we buy JCU. JCU also has a whole bunch of grassroots projects. And I think what's most exciting for us is that the fit between JCU and us couldn't be better, in our opinion. They have the things that we don't necessarily have. We have things that they don't necessarily have. And together we'll form a sustainable uranium developer with multiple sources of low supply cost production, but bolstered by an incredible pipeline of opportunities that will continue to help the company grow and sustain itself into the long-term future. And I think that would make UEX a very unique investment in the space. So like we said, the new UEX value proposition will be one of the largest uranium junior resource, or our company combined will have one of the largest resources in the space of just under 200 million pounds if you combine the historical resources of 97 million pounds from JCU with our just under 100 million pounds of resources. We have that multiple sources of production that we talked about, that sustainability. Whether you like the uranium space, hate the uranium space, and I'm assuming you like it because you're sitting here on this call, I think when you look at our relative value to the peers, where you are thinking the market happens to be, there's a lot of room for us to move. But unique to the space and having access to production like we will with this transaction, we'll also have a unique spot to grow the company through our mid-stage and resource level projects, which we'll talk about as we move forward. And there's a lot of words. I think the key thing here for these people who want to take away a copy of something like this, we will own a stake in 6 of the next 10 uranium projects going forward. The purchase price net of cash in hand from JCU will be 10 cents a pound. In a market right now where we're being valued at about 91 cents a pound and our peers are being valued at $5 and something cents a pound. The components themselves, whether it's Wheeler River, Millennium, worth way more in the end of the day in the market than what we're paying. The Kikivik pounds have never seen market exposure. We think it has a great opportunity to see the company re-rate post-transaction. Key projects that we're picking up moving forward, while we already own Christie Lake, is one of the top exploration projects and mid-stage exploration projects in the Athabasca Basin. This will help us consolidate 100% of that. But the key projects Wheeler River, Millennium, and Kegavik. Wheeler River, well known because of the Denison's involvement, who owns 90% of this 135 million pound resource. We'll own 10% of that. It's on track for that ISR production before the end of the decade. The one that people don't know probably the most about is Kegavik. It's a Rano operated project up in Nunavut in the Thelon Basin, just west of Baker Lake. The Thelon is an analogous basin to the Athabasca. There's 10 known deposits here. 5 of them are in that resource category. And this project's been through feasibility study and the permitting process. And probably the one that people know a little bit about, but don't really know a lot about is Millennium. Cameco's probable very next development project that would be something they think about doing when Cigar Lake comes to the end of its life here closer in the next 2028, 2029 window. There we go. The resulting transaction when we close this is going to give us a really unique position in the Canadian uranium space. Vertical scale here is the grade. The horizontal scale here is the pounds, total pounds. The size of the bubble here is the size of the pounds. UX owned through JC or directly will be in those blue dots there. And you can see very significant stake in what's coming forward. I mean, it shows you that Arrow is unique with its McArthur River Cigar Lake analog, but in the rest of those projects, we're going to own a piece of 6 of the next 10 tier 1 projects, 3 of the next 4 tier 2 projects going forward. And that will make us unique because not many, I can't think of another company in the junior space that would have that kind of access to pounds in the low cost jurisdictions like the Athabasca Basin. When you compare us to our peers, pre-transaction announcement on April 22nd, we were valued at a market cap per pound basis of about $1.43. If you factor in where we are trading today and include the JCU pounds, that's about a 91-cent pound valuation. But when you compare it to the US producers or our peers in the Athabasca Basin, or even globally, there's a tremendous amount of room for a re-rating of the company post-transaction. And we think that's a compelling value proposition for shareholders. And then even when you compare it to our peers on a market cap basis, still a lot of room to move. Whether you like UEX pounds, you think that you're undervalued today, that was in the company prior to the transaction, or whether you just think the new pounds bring value only, there's certainly a lot of room to see your re-rating of the company. With the acquisition also comes 9 other minority stake interest in Athabasca projects. Because JCU was around in 2000, and because they picked up properties from the legendary PNC explorer developer that was successful globally, they were in before the last rush as well. Their property positions complements ours extremely well and focuses in mostly the Eastern Athabasca Basin in and around world-class mines and or the next key development projects. And I think it complements our portfolio extraordinarily well. We'll have a large portfolio. The advantage that we will have here is that none of these are burning holes in pockets in terms of the expenditures at a grassroots level, and there are discretionary. So we can pick and choose what we want to do with these assets in terms of participating or not in the future, and doesn't require a lot of our management time or team time. The resulting new company, very unique. A lot of companies here you'll see in the Athabasca, particularly a lot of grassroots companies. You have your development companies, but they don't have that space in the middle that we occupy really well at UX. So orange here is the JCU projects that we'll be picking up. Blue is the existing UEX projects. And you'll see with Wheeler, Millennium, and Kegavik, we look at medium, short, long-term production output potentially with a large grassroots portfolio that will help feed the current pipeline that's already in the UX. So Horseshoe Raven and Shea Creek, great projects that will help the company sustain output when these the 3 other key projects get moving forward or come to the end of their lives. The real strength of this combined company will also be, in addition to the low-cost production, multi-sourced angle, is that pipeline in the mid-stage and resource level projects, where we have a lower risk opportunity to turn things like Christie Lake, where we're on a world-class trend emanating from the McArthur River mine, have 3 deposits and counting, and yet have not even looked at 10% of that trend as it sits on our property. Or at Hidden Bay, where we're looking for the Millennium Eagle Point Arrow-style deposit in the basement, where there's clues from the shallow and conformity bay portions that have been drilled like a cigar-like style target, tell us we should be looking deeper. And we have dozens of targets on these projects that will help sustain and build up resources over time. So we think it makes a unique company that looks a lot more like a mid-stage copper producer or a mid-stage gold producer than a typical uranium company we see today. And not only that, UEX through our previous lives where we managed a lot of these projects for Cameco and my previous life for our team. I was involved in the Millennium delineation as well, and various other projects. We know these projects, or a lot of these projects, very well. The company's focus, of course, will change post-transaction. We'll be assisting in moving Willie River project forward. The advantage of not being the operator, though, and not being financially burdened with a majority stake interest, is that we'll be able to focus on those mid-stage resource level projects, continue to grow the company, not just there at Hidden Bay, West Bear, and Christie Lake, but at Shea Creek, where we think is with our partner Rano, this is one of the most compelling brownfields exploration projects in the Athabasca Basin. A lot of the shareholders know about our cobalt. We'll be looking probably to move that sooner than later because it just doesn't sit as well in the larger uranium company that will be post-transaction. Longer term, we'll work with Cameco to move Millennium forward, and then we use Horseshoe Raven and Kigavik to help with sustaining the company in the long term. When you're going back to the value creation in this pipeline projects, the acquisition price net is about 10 cents a pound. If you don't like UEX's pounds in the past, you look at the components here, whether it's our 10% stake in Wheeler River that at today's market value in Denison is valued at almost $90 million, or the fact that Cameco paid $8 a pound for a 26% interest from Orano in a 67 million pound resource at Millennium, which is now 105, or that you say, what's the value of Kigavik in the market? I think it's very compelling that this is a value creative acquisition for UX. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about Wheeler River, Millennium, and Kigavik going forward here, just because you might not know a little bit about mostly Millennium and Kigavik. And then we'll turn it over to questions. Wheeler River, Denison's done a phenomenal job telling everybody about what's happening there. So there's not much for us to tell you. We're excited about the ISR test program that's underway, and we're excited about their working through the environmental assessment process here that we started in January, and we're excited to see what the results of the ISR program will be, and we're looking forward to being a partner there. They're doing all the right things that they need to do to get this project through the CNSC process, and we're excited to be a part of that when we get to plug into the project fully. At Millennium, the one project not many people know as much about, Cameco is the operator, historical resource of just under 105 million pounds. It's basement hosted, so it's very much hosted the same types of environments that you would see an Eagle Point or an Arrow, but down the unconformity at about a depth of about 550 meters. The valley being underground, it allows conventional underground mining techniques to be used as opposed to the fancy freezing techniques that are used elsewhere. This project went through almost the entire permitting process until Cameco withdrew the project description in 2015 due to the poor uranium prices just before hearings. Whereas the public hearings are already had. We think that when Cameco picks this project up to replace Cigar Lake, this will move relatively quickly through the remainder of the permitting process. Likewise, at Kigavik, where Rano's the majority partner, this project has got 10 known deposits. 5 of them are in the resource, so there's real growth upside here. It's in Baker Lake, just west of Baker Lake. It went through the entire permitting process, and it was turned down, not so much for technical, environmental, or social reasons, but because at the time with low uranium prices, the operator decided not to try to put a start date on this. And we think, once again, when Orano is ready when we have to move this project forward, the permitting process will be relatively quick. So those are the 3 key projects we're picking up. We, of course, are big fans of of Shea Creek, where we think with our partner Orano, we could find more Canna-style deposits here. We've identified 10 areas to make that happen. If we could find one more Canna under the footprint of the existing deposit, where Canna owns about half the resource at Shea Creek, we can turn this into a substantially larger project. So with that in mind, Horseshoe Raven, I'll just briefly touch on that. Pound for pound is valuable as Millennium, according to our PEA. And Christie Lake, example of the kind of mid-stage resource level projects we have, the extension of the McArthur River Fault, 3 deposits that have only been that have exploration potential back towards McArthur and actually away from McArthur along the same trend. And we'll be working, spending about $2 million on that this winter, or this summer, excuse me. So with that in mind, I won't talk a little bit about cobalt projects, except that we've made our second discovery here of cobalt on the West Bear project and a new deposit here this winter, and we're excited about what we can do with this project and monetize the value of assets for our shareholders, hopefully before the end of the year. So to summarize, the new UEX combined with JCU low-cost, multi-source uranium production potential, large resource base, one of the largest in the basin, sustainability because of the pipeline, mid-stage resource growth potential, and a compelling re-rating value argument to be made. And a team that's the right team to make this happen, experience at finding things, etc. With that, Tim, turn it back to you for any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Roger. Thank you for the excellent presentation. We'll now have our Q&A session here. Feel free to enter questions if you have any in mind. We do have a few already submitted here. And kind of along the lines, not too surprisingly, with the JCU acquisition, obviously Denison has come in with a bid for JCU as well. And is there concern with the UEX JCU deal not being approved based on Denison's bid coming in for JCU?
I'm going to be very honest. What we said in our press release last week pretty much does say it all. We have a binding deal with OURD for JCU. They're committed to having to support that deal with the shareholders, and we're convinced, we're comfortable that they will honor their commitment, and it's very tightly bound. So we're pretty comfortable with where we're at.
Great. And along the same lines, obviously JCU is not a typical kind of public company here, but is there shareholder approval on JCU that would need to go through, and is there a chance that they would change their minds?
There is a shareholder approval. We said that in the news release we did originally. That's one of their conditions. We are not surprised that there would have been other interest in the property. We knew there's a 2-month window between board approval and shareholder approval. So, with knowing that there would be interest in that, I think we've done a very good job of tying it down.
Good.
We have it.
Great. And I know you had mentioned before, but what is you've had a working relationship and a good relationship with JCU over time. How, I guess, tell us a little bit of the background leading up to the deal.
Well, there's sort of a for me personally, there's a pre-UEX and a post-UEX angle on this. I managed many of these projects for Cameco back when I was an employee at Cameco, managed the Millennium Cree Extension joint venture and a bunch of others, and had direct involvement with JCU at that time. UEX has had an involvement with JCU since its early days back in around 2006-ish, where we came into a joint venture with them and Orano on a Beatty River project just west and southwest of Shea Creek. And then probably the more recently with our deal in 2015 with Christie Lake, excuse me, where we had to work with them a lot more closely. And so our team as well, our team, two of our key technical people were involved in Millennium Lake delineation. So they've had to see our team members for a very, very long time. And I think we've built a very good trusting relationship over many, many years. We've always tried to do what we say we're going to do. We managed to do a great deal for them and for us when we picked up Christie Lake and said we would raise, well, at the time was a tremendously difficult amount of money to buy the property or probably a piece of the property from them, and we were able to do it. And so I think from both sides there, I'm certainly from our side, I can't really speak for OURD/JCU, but from our side, we have a lot of trust in our relationship with them. Great.
Well, if there are no other questions here, I'd like to thank you very much, Roger and Evelyn, for your presentation today and participating in our conference today. And thank you folks out there for your time and attention and for your questions.